Tears in the dust. The sun burned hot over the dusty alien marketplace. It was a dry world full of broken metal, loud traders, and old machines. No one smiled here. Everyone was busy buying or selling food, weapons, scrap, and sometimes even people. Near the edge of the marketplace, next to a pile of rusted robot parts, sat a little alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, and her clothes were torn and too small for her. Her big purple eyes were full of tears. Dust covered her face. Her knees were scraped. She was no older than 6, maybe younger. The girl wasn't crying loudly anymore, just soft, broken sobs. Her voice was weak as she whispered again and again, "Daddy, please, please be my daddy." But no one stopped. A tall alien vendor saw her and shouted, "Hey, move, you little rat. Go cry somewhere else." The girl didn't move. She was too tired, too hungry, too scared. She just hugged her small arms around her knees and closed her eyes. Then a shadow fell over her. She opened her eyes slowly. Standing there was a man. Not like the others. He was human. He wore an old leather jacket, dusty boots, and carried a small bag over his shoulder. His eyes were sharp but kind. His name was Jackson, a traveler from Earth, a fixer of old machines, and someone who didn't belong here. Jackson knelt beside her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently. The little girl looked at him. Her lips trembled. "Are you my daddy?" she whispered. Jackson froze. He looked around. No one claimed her. No one even looked in their direction. He saw the bruises on her arms, the broken shoes on her feet, the fear in her eyes. "I'm not your daddy," Jackson said carefully. "But, do you need help?" She nodded slowly. He held out his hand. She hesitated. Then with shaky fingers she grabbed it. Jackson took her to a nearby food stall. The owner, a grumpy green-skinned alien, refused at first. "No credits, no food," he grunted. Jackson pulled out a small coin. "This is all I've got." "Not enough for both," the alien said. "Just feed her." The food was old and dry, but the girl ate like she hadn't eaten in days. Maybe more. Jackson watched her closely. She never took her eyes off him, like she was afraid he'd vanish. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. "Do you have any family?" She shook her head. "Where do you sleep?" She looked down. Nowhere. Jackson felt his chest tighten. Something in her voice, so broken, so small, stabbed at his heart. He wasn't a hero. He just fixed ships, traveled alone, stayed out of trouble. But this little girl, she didn't belong in the dirt. "Come with me," he said. Jackson took her to his small cargo ship on the edge of town. It was old but clean. Inside he gave her a blanket, some water, and a place to sit. Still, she said nothing. That night, as Jackson sat fixing a broken circuit, she curled up beside him without a word. Then, very softly, she whispered, "I don't want to be alone anymore." Jackson looked at her. She wasn't asking for food or toys. She was asking for something deeper. For a father. Suddenly, there was a knock on the ship door. Jackson stood and opened it slightly. 3 tall aliens stood outside. Their eyes were cold. One of them growled, "We're looking for a small blue girl. She stole something." "She's just a child," Jackson replied. "She's property," one of them snapped. "Return her." Jackson's jaw tightened. He didn't open the door any wider. "She's not here," he lied. They stared at him for a moment, then walked away. Jackson shut the door and turned. The girl had heard everything. She was shaking. He knelt down beside her and said, "You're safe now, I promise." She looked at him with wide eyes, and for the first time, she smiled. A small, tired, thankful smile. But Jackson knew this was just the beginning. Something was wrong. Something dangerous, and he was now part of it. But one thing was certain. He would not let anyone take her again. The old cargo ship hummed softly in the quiet night. Jackson sat in the pilot seat, his eyes fixed on the stars outside. He didn't trust this planet anymore. Not after those aliens came knocking. They were looking for her. Behind him, the little alien girl slept curled up under a blanket on the floor, close to the engine where it was warm. Her arms were still wrapped tight around a small cloth, dirty, worn, and probably the only thing she owned. Jackson had questions, but he didn't want to scare her. Morning came slow, with pale red light slipping through the dusty ship windows. Jackson made something simple: warm broth, stale bread, and a few pieces of dried fruit. Not much, but it was all he had left. She sat quietly on the bench, hands in her lap, not touching the food. "You need to eat," Jackson said gently. She looked at him, then looked away. "What's your name?" she whispered so softly he almost missed it. "Luma." "Luma," Jackson repeated with a smile. "That's a nice name." She stared at him. Then her lips moved again. "Is it okay if I call you Daddy?" Jackson paused. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat down across from her. "You can call me whatever makes you feel safe," he said. Her eyes watered, but she nodded. "Okay, Daddy." Later that day, Jackson took the ship to a nearby moon, safer place, quiet and hidden from trade routes. He needed time to think, to figure out why a child like Luma was being hunted. As the ship rested in orbit, Luma slowly began to talk. Piece by piece, the truth came out. "I used to live underground," she whispered. "In the mining camps, with my mama." Jackson leaned in, listening carefully. Mama worked in the rocks. She always came home hurt. Her hands would bleed. He felt something tighten in his chest. One day she didn't come back. Jackson asked softly, "And your father?" Luma's face went still, cold. "He said I was useless, that I made too much noise. He sold me to a trader." Jackson felt a chill go through him. "Sold you?" She nodded. "They put me in a cage. Said I had special blood. I don't know why. I ran when the cage broke during a storm." She looked down, her fingers twisting the cloth in her hands. "I've been running ever since." Jackson couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had seen evil before in the galaxy. But this was something else. A child sold like scrap, hunted for her special blood. What did they mean by special? He opened his datapad and scanned Luma while she slept that night. Her DNA results came back strange. She wasn't just any alien. She carried a rare genetic marker, something ancient, something powerful. A bloodline thought to be extinct. Her cells could be used in bioweapons or forced evolution programs. She wasn't a child to them. She was a tool, a resource. Jackson stared at the screen, fists clenched. No wonder they were after her. The next morning, Jackson packed fast. He woke Luma with a gentle touch. "We're leaving." She sat up, blinking. "Why?" "They'll come back. We're not safe here." Luma hesitated. "They always find me." Jackson knelt to her level. "Not this time," he promised. "I'm not like the others. I won't let them touch you." She stared into his eyes. "Do you mean it?" He nodded. And then she hugged him. Tight, as if she'd never let go. As the ship lifted off the moon, Jackson looked down at the datapad once more. Luma's past had been stolen. Her blood made her a target. Her parents were gone, or worse. But now she had someone. Now she had him. Jackson didn't know what kind of war he was walking into, but he knew one thing clearly. He would fight galaxies. He would tear apart empires, just to protect his daughter. The ship floated silently in the cold black of space. Jackson had shut down all signals. No lights, no engine sounds, no heat trails. Just darkness. He wanted to keep Luma safe, hidden. But peace doesn't last long in the galaxy. Especially when someone places a price on your child. He had just started a system check when the alert pinged. Incoming signal. Unmarked ship, tracking your last location. Jackson's eyes narrowed. They found us. He turned around. Luma sat near the storage crates, hugging her knees, half asleep. Luma, he said calmly. We need to move again. She stood up quickly. Are they coming? He nodded. Yes, but I won't let them get near you. She walked to him and whispered, Promise? Jackson reached down, placed a hand on her shoulder. Promise. He activated the stealth drive, an illegal upgrade he had hidden under his floor panels for years. It wasn't perfect, but it could bend light, mask heat, and help the ship vanish. In the dark, the ship slipped into the shadow of a shattered moon. They waited, for hours. Luma stayed close to Jackson. She didn't cry, didn't sleep. She just listened, and then they heard it, a thump, on the hull. Jackson pulled out his sidearm and motioned Luma to crawl under the floor compartment. Stay there. Don't move. No matter what happens. She didn't argue. The ship shook slightly. Jackson moved carefully down the hallway, gun ready. He heard scratching sounds, metal on metal. Then a loud hiss from the airlock door. They were trying to break, and he opened the nearest vent and crawled inside, moving through the narrow ducts toward the rear hatch. Whoever was outside didn't know Jackson had traps. Click. Bang. A flash charge exploded as soon as the airlock opened. A loud scream followed. Alien voices, angry and confused. Jackson burst out from the vent behind them, aiming carefully. One of the attackers, a tall lizard-like alien, turned in time to see Jackson fire. He dropped instantly. The others ran for cover. But Jackson was trained. Before he became a traitor, he had served in the Earth colonial forces. He didn't like violence, but he wasn't afraid of it. And no one threatened his daughter. After the short battle, 2 attackers were dead, 1 escaped, and Jackson was left with a damaged airlock. He returned inside, breathing hard, his shirt torn and arm bleeding. He opened the hidden floor panel. Luma crawled out, shaking. You're hurt. It's just a scratch, he said, sitting down. You okay? She nodded, then hugged him tight. I heard the gun. I was so scared. He stroked her hair gently. I told you, I'd protect you. But deep down, Jackson was worried. This wasn't a simple bounty hunt. These weren't common thugs. They moved with purpose, with training. Someone powerful had sent them, and they weren't going to stop. Jackson cleaned his wound and worked fast. He patched the airlock, activated the emergency hyperdrive, and plotted a course to the old drift zone, a junkyard in deep space where no one dared go. There, he'd find an old friend, someone who knew secrets, someone who could tell him why. Luma's blood was so special. As they entered hyperspace, Luma finally broke the silence. I saw them once before, she said softly. The ones who came tonight? No. The men with black eyes, they put other children in glass tanks. Jackson turned to her slowly. Tanks? They said the children were being prepared, but Mama told me to hide in the pipes. She died the next day. A heavy silence followed. Jackson clenched the controls. Whatever they wanted with Luma, it wasn't just science. It was cruel. He looked at her, this small, fragile soul who had seen too much pain. Then he reached over and held her hand. You'll never be in a tank, he whispered, not while I breathe. And this time she didn't just nod, she believed him. Jackson's ship floated through a silent graveyard in space. Dead ships drifted all around, old war cruisers, mining rigs, broken cargo freighters. This was the drift zone, a forgotten place, where machines went to die, and secrets were buried deep. He landed the ship inside the shell of an old cargo carrier. No signals, no lights, no sound, just shadows. Inside the ship, Luma sat quietly, drawing shapes with her finger on the dusty metal floor. Her eyes were tired but calm. Is this a safe place? She asked. For now, Jackson replied. He checked the scanners twice. No ships, in range. No signs of heat. But his heart wasn't calm. Not anymore. Jackson stepped into the back room and pulled out a hidden metal box. Inside was a small hollow card. He inserted it into the ship's console. A message appeared. A face made of light. It was an old friend. Dr. Merrick, a geneticist. Human. Now in hiding after exposing illegal cloning programs on Zeron 9. Merrick, Jackson said, I found a girl. She's being hunted. Something about her DNA. The hologram blinked. Describe her. She's part Thalari. Small, bright eyes. She said others like her were taken. Merrick's face darkened. Oh no. Not again. A few minutes later, Merrick's voice came back with a serious tone. She's from the Lunara batch. What does that mean? Jackson asked. 43 alien girls, all born with unique blood markers, engineered in secret by a syndicate, only meant to be test subjects. Jackson felt his stomach twist. You mean they made her in a lab? Maybe not made, but selected, raised to be sold, used, copied. Some had telepathic gifts. Others, healing traits. Some were just lucky mutations. And the others, dead or missing. If she escaped, they'll want her back, desperately. Jackson looked at Luma through the doorway. She was still humming softly to herself, making stars with her fingers in the dust. He turned back to the screen. She's not a subject. She's a child. Merrick nodded. Then you have a choice to make Jackson keep running or become her father in truth, fight for her, teach her, let her grow. Jackson ended the call and stared at the wall. He thought about his life. Years of drifting, fixing broken engines, drinking recycled water. Always alone. He never thought he'd be anyone's hero. But now, he was the only thing between Luma and monsters. He stood and walked into the main room. Luma looked up at him. Are we going to leave again? No, Jackson said. Her eyes widened. Why not? Because we're not hiding anymore. He knelt in front of her. I don't want to just protect you. I want to raise you. Teach you. Be your father. Her lips quivered. Really? Jackson nodded. You're not a mistake. You're not property. You're my daughter now. She jumped into his arms, holding him tight. Tears fell from her eyes, but this time they were happy tears. And Jackson, who had never known what a family felt like, closed his eyes and held her back. That night, as the stars drifted past the cracked windows, Jackson began working. He removed the smuggling systems from his ship. Instead, he installed defense turrets, shield reinforcements, and a new identification code. Father and daughter transport, civilian protected class. He knew it wouldn't stop everyone. But it was a message. They weren't prey anymore. They were family, and they would fight to stay together. Far across the galaxy, in a dark tower lit by electric blue fires, a tall alien in black robes received a message. Lunara 13 has been found. The alien turned toward a glowing screen. Luma's face projected in green light. Send the black hounds, he whispered, and bring the human too. I want to watch him break. But Jackson wasn't breaking. He was just getting started. A new name, a new ship code, a new life. Jackson and Luma flew into the outer colonies under a peaceful identity. Father and daughter, traveling engineers. No more hiding in shadows, no more illegal ports. Jackson had forged documents, family ID, chips, and even school registration for Luma. He wanted her to grow up free. They landed on Alaris 7, a calm green world with soft skies and slow-moving rivers. The people were kind, the laws light, and no one asked questions. For a short while, it felt like a dream. Luma went to a local learning pod with other children. She wore clean clothes now, brushed her hair, and learned how to count in 3 languages. Her favorite thing was drawing stars. Jackson worked at a repair station, fixing broken hovercrafts and old cargo loaders. At night, he cooked warm meals, for the 2 of them. They laughed. They watched old Earth movies. Luma even made friends. She began to smile more often. She called Jackson Daddy without fear now, not like she was trying to believe it, but like she knew it. But dreams don't last in a galaxy that hunts you. One evening, as Jackson was locking the shop, he saw something that chilled his blood. A silver drone, small, silent, hovered near the edge of the building. It wasn't local, tech. It vanished the moment he looked up. Jackson ran. When he got home, Luma was already inside, coloring pictures of flowers and moons. He didn't want to scare her, so he smiled. But behind that smile, his mind raced. They had found them again. He activated a hidden scanner built into the wall. Sure enough, a tracking beacon had been placed on the outside of their home. Not pirates, not bounty hunters. This was government level. Tech, they weren't just chasing Luma anymore, now they were watching. That night, Jackson couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling while Luma snored softly beside him. For the first time, she looked truly peaceful, and for the first time, he was afraid that peace would be ripped away. Again. The next morning, things got worse. At the marketplace, 3 aliens in dark uniforms walked straight past him. They weren't buying. They weren't shopping. They were scanning faces. Jackson ducked behind a fruit stall and pulled out a small pulse jammer, disabling their scanners for 10 seconds. It gave him just enough time to vanish into the crowd. He sprinted back home, heart pounding. Luma was safe, but not for long. Later that day, Luma noticed the tension. She wasn't stupid. "Are they coming again?" she asked. Jackson sat down and held her hand. "Maybe. Will you send me away?" His face hardened. "Never. We're in this together." She smiled, but her eyes still looked worried. Then she said something that shocked him. "I don't want to run anymore." Jackson was quiet. "I want to stay," she said. "I want to have a life. Even if it's dangerous." She was just a child. But those words were not from a child's heart. They were from someone who had already seen too much. That evening, Jackson called in a favor from an old war contact. Someone in the resistance. Someone who didn't care about laws, bloodlines, or money. A voice came over the screen. "Jax, haven't heard from you since the Terran siege. What's the job?" "I need protection," Jackson said. "Not for me, for my daughter." There was a pause, then the voice asked, "Biological?" "No." "Adopted?" Jackson looked at Luma, sitting quietly with a cup of tea. "No," he said, smiling. "She's mine." Soon after, resistance operatives arrived. Quiet, professional, armed. They swept the area, jammed surveillance, and placed a force field perimeter around the house. "We can buy you a few days," one of them said. Jackson nodded. "That's all I need." Luma walked up to the soldier, her small hands behind her back. "Will you fight for me?" she asked. The soldier blinked, then saluted. "Yes, little one, we'll fight for you." But across the stars, the man in black robes, Commander Varn, was watching. He slammed his fist against the screen. "Why won't that human give her up?" An assistant replied, "He's declared family rights under human colonial law. It complicates the bounty." Varn growled, "I don't care about human law. Prepare the black hounds. Tell them, bring me the girl." The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. The courtroom floated in space like a silent moon. It was massive, an old Terran structure built on neutral ground, used by many alien species for solving the galaxy's most serious matters. Leaders, nobles, traitors, and warlords had stood here to speak. Some had walked away free, others had not walked away at all. Today, a human stood at the center, and beside him stood a tiny blue alien girl holding his hand. Jackson wore a simple black suit, not a weapon on him. His eyes were tired but steady. Luma stood quietly in a white robe. Her eyes searched the high walls of the court where alien judges watched from thrones of crystal, steel, and stone. There were 9 of them, each from a different race, all powerful, all respected, and none of them looked kind. A voice echoed through the chamber. "State your case, human." Jackson took a breath. "I come to request full protection for this child," he said. "Her name is Luma. She is being hunted. She is being treated like property. I ask that you give her status as a free citizen under galactic child law." The judges shifted in their seats. One spoke sharply. "That child is not from your blood." Another hissed, "Her DNA is marked. She is part of a restricted research batch. She belongs to the syndicate by law." Jackson stepped forward. "I don't care about syndicate laws. I don't care about what she was meant to be. She is not a weapon. She is not a thing. She's a child, and she calls me father." Luma held Jackson's hand tighter. "I used to sleep in the dust," she said quietly, surprising everyone by speaking. "I didn't know what a hug felt like. I didn't know what food tasted like when it wasn't stolen." Her voice echoed. "I thought I was a mistake." She looked up at the 9 judges. "But now I have someone. He holds my hand when I'm scared. He reads to me. He tells me I matter. He calls me his daughter." A long silence fell over the chamber. Suddenly, a roar broke through the silence. A new figure entered the courtroom. Tall, wrapped in black armor, Commander Varn. He walked straight to the center without permission. "This is nonsense," he growled. "That creature was created in our labs. She holds genetic markers that can evolve entire species. That's not a child. That's a blueprint." Jackson stepped in front of Luma. "She's not yours." "She's not yours either, human." Varney spat. "You're nothing. A machine fixer pretending to be a father." Jackson didn't flinch. "I may not be special. I may not have power. But I gave her something none of you ever did." He turned to the judges. "I gave her love. I gave her a choice." The room went quiet again. Then the head judge leaned forward. "Do you have proof of this bond?" Jackson nodded. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small chip. "I recorded her DNA bond to me, voluntarily activated by her. A child's imprint given freely, her choice, not forced, not manipulated." He placed the chip into the chambers. "Reader." A soft hologram appeared, Luma's tiny hand reaching out, her voice whispering, "I choose him." The courtroom went still. After a long pause, the lead judge turned to the others. They whispered among themselves. Faces unreadable, cold, calculating. Then the decision was spoken. "We grant Luma citizenship. She is no longer property. This human is recognized as her legal father." Jackson closed his eyes in relief. Luma blinked in disbelief. It was done, but the judge wasn't finished. "You are now under full galactic protection, but be warned. The syndicate will not stop," Commander Varn hissed behind them. "You think paper shields will save her?" He turned and stormed out. Jackson lifted Luma into his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck, whispering, "We're free now?" He nodded. "We are." But deep down he knew what was coming. They had won the law. Now they'd have to survive the war. The stars looked calm above the green world of Tressa 4, but peace was a lie. Jackson knew it. So did Luma. They had won in the courtroom, but the syndicate didn't care about law. They cared about power, and they were coming. Jackson had already made plans. A safe house deep in the forest, old friends from his soldier days watching the skies, a small army of rebels nearby waiting for a signal. But nothing could stop the fear rising in his chest every time Luma smiled at him. Because he knew, this time they would not stop until one of them fell. Luma was stronger now. Not just in body, but in heart. She studied. She trained. She learned how to use her voice, her mind. Jackson taught her basic defense, how to fly a small shuttle, how to stay hidden if needed. But one thing never changed. She still called him Daddy with that soft, warm voice. He still answered her like she was his own blood. Because she was. Not by birth, but by something far deeper. Then it happened. The sky cracked open. Black ships, sleek and sharp, ripped through the atmosphere like knives. The Black Hounds had arrived. No warning, no mercy. They destroyed the landing ports, burned the communication towers. People screamed and ran, and through the smoke, they came for one girl. Jackson grabbed Luma and ran. Blasters hit trees around them. His old friends held the line, buying seconds. But it wasn't enough. He reached the safe bunker, placed Luma inside the shielding unit, and knelt in front of her. "If anything happens to me—" "No," she shouted, clutching his jacket. "You listen to me," he said, voice firm but gentle. "You survive. You live. You grow." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I don't want to live without you." He smiled, brushing her hair back. "You won't have to." Jackson stepped outside. Smoke covered the trees. He raised his rifle. One by one, he fought them back. He was wounded, bleeding, tired. But he didn't fall. Not yet. Because behind that bunker door was someone worth every drop of pain. Someone who had cried in the dust. Someone who once asked him, "Will you be my daddy?" Then a final ship landed. Commander Varn stepped out, armored, cruel, ready to finish it himself. He walked toward the bunker, stepping over his fallen soldiers. Jackson stood between him and the door. "You're finished," Varn growled. "I'm just getting started," Jackson said. They fought. Not like warriors, but like two men who had everything to lose. Varn knocked Jackson to the ground, raised a blade. Luma screamed from inside the bunker. Then, something happened. A light exploded from the bunker. A force so pure, so powerful, it knocked Varn off his feet. Luma stepped out, eyes glowing, hands raised. Not scared, not running, but standing. The genetic power they wanted to control. It was hers. And she used it not to hurt, but to protect. The trees bent to her will. The earth pushed Varn back. Even the sky seemed to roar. "Leave my father alone," she said, voice echoing like thunder. Varn crawled backward, afraid for the first time. You're a monster," he gasped. She stepped forward. Calm, gentle. "No," she said softly. "I'm a daughter." And with that, she collapsed into Jackson's arms. The light faded. The soldiers fled. The battle was over. Weeks passed. The world healed. Jackson's wounds faded. Luma laughed again, and this time, no one hunted them. No one claimed her. No one questioned who she belonged to, because the galaxy had seen it with their own eyes. The bond between a human man and an alien girl was not weak. It was unbreakable. On a quiet hill, Jackson built a home. Luma grew taller. She planted flowers, wrote stories, learned to fly. And every night, before sleep, she hugged her father and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." And Jackson always replied, "No, little star. Thank you for choosing me."